As the first business, we will have a moment of silence. So join with me. All right, thank you. Hunter, would you lead us in the pledge? I should have asked you ahead of time.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, review and adoption of the agenda.
I would like to amend the agenda.
All right.
I would like to make an item 8E to add a discussion for Senate Bill 288. And that would move the current items E through H down. So that would make the facilities report F, the tax report G, the deputy report H, and the committee reports I.
Okay.
And I'd like to make that in a motion.
All right. I'll call it for a vote.
Cole, yes.
Mike, yes. Terry, yes.
Derek, yes.
Ben, yes.
All right. Look over your minutes and make a motion when you're ready.
We have one more amendment to the agenda,
Oh, I'm sorry.
closed session.
Oh, yes, we need to add under other business, a 9A for, closed session personnel.
Okay, we have two amendments, and we vote for that in one motion, I assume. Okay, I'll call it for a vote again.
Cole, yes.
Mike, yes. Terry, yes.
Derek, yes.
Ben, yes.
All right, thank you. Now look over your minutes and make a motion whenever you're ready.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the minutes.
All right. I'm gonna call it for a vote.
Cole, yes.
Mike, yes. Terry, yes.
Derek, yes.
Ben, yes.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
No one signed up.
No public comment, okay. All right, number 6, we're gonna have a public hearing. And I open this public hearing. And 6A will be the presentation from Western Piedmont Council of Governments for 160D updates. John E. Weir.
Thank you, Mayor. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Great. So I've passed out 4 different documents to you. The first one is a memo outlining all the changes in your ordinance, which is 160D. The second is the planning board bylaws, which do not have a lot of changes due to 160D, mainly the citations. The third document is your zoning ordinance with those changes, though it's not the whole zoning ordinance. It's just the change. It's just the sections that are affected the most. That would include kind of the beginning of your ordinance, and then toward the end of your administration and enforcement. And then the final one is your subdivision changes to 160D. So the general statutes, of course, used to reside in chapters 153A for counties and 160A for municipalities. Those have been consolidated now into one 160D chapter. And really what it's done is kind of a lot of housekeeping. So it's cleaned up a lot of the general statutes with regard to development law. And what you'll find in the ordinance is it doesn't change really the intent of your ordinance at all with regards to land use. So whatever you have written in your zoning ordinance now with regard to zoning districts or things that are allowed in those districts, this does not affect those at all. This is really more definitions, administration, that type of things that's been added. So if you go to your memo, And then, one of those changes, as a result of 160D, you do have to have an up-to-date comprehensive plan or land use plan by July 1st, 2022. That's one of the requirements. It's not directly in the ordinance, but that is one of the requirements of the ordinance or of the general statutes. So beginning at the bottom of the page, 160D, zoning ordinance changes, the bottom of the first page of that memo. I've summarized it, and I'm just going to go through them real quick. You know, as we went through this process with the planning board, it was probably about an hour-long presentation, going into the depth of everything, but we're here. I'm trying to keep it to 10 minutes because I know you guys don't want to be in here all night. So the changes you have, number one, Article 1, purpose and authority. That's just some language that we're changing over because of the 160D. One of the biggest changes you'll find in the ordinance is the change from conditional use permits to special use permits. So because across the state, everyone was using different language. They had conditional use permits, conditional use zoning, special use zoning, special use permits. For the purposes of this, for this type of permit, the conditional use permit, which goes to the Board of Adjustment as a quasi-judicial procedure, those are now called special use permits. So everywhere in the ordinance that it references conditional use permits, it's now special use permits. If you go to page 2, one of the things they wanted to see was the new definitions that went along with the state definitions. So at number 3, section 6.2, page 9, the definitions, those are all the new definitions that have been added to your ordinance through administrative decision all the way to legislative hearing. Number 4, section 7.2, page 19. We added a general statute citation referring to the official zoning map. This is pretty important. So you guys, I see you have your official zoning map in the corner here. You're going to want to keep updated maps about every year of that. They want to have, I guess, someone be able to come in and reference their zoning map, you know, for when they purchase the property or when they build something on the property. So anytime there are changes in the zoning map, you need to keep a copy of that old zoning map for them to inspect. So I know a lot of local governments probably haven't been doing that over the years, so that's really important to do.
And I'll also mention you guys adopted last month the official 2021 or the official 2021 zoning map, and that's the start this process of having an updated zoning map each year where we have a record of keep an active record of every year previously. And we still keep track of every zoning map amendment we do throughout the year with the rezonings.
How many back years do we have now?
We have every single zoning map amendment that's been done at least since 2006. We've referencing maps, 3 or 4. Well, technically the map's been updated every time, but the council has not adopted a brand new official map per se. I guess you're just making an amendment to that one that was previously adopted.
All right, so section 16.1, page 125, you see we jumped a long ways from page 19 to page 125 in your zoning ordinance. There are references to special use permits in those pages. Also, I forgot to mention at the very beginning, all the citations to 168 have been updated to 160D for the corresponding new citation. And those are highlighted in yellow in your ordinance. So page 16, or section 16.1, page 125, zoning enforcement officer. That's a new subsection referring to conflicts of interest in administrative approval. So it's just a conflict of interest statement for whoever the zoning zoning officer is. 16.1, page 125. It's a new subsection referring to the zoning enforcement officer's permission to inspect work pursuant to development approvals in accordance with applicable state and local laws. On the next page, number 7, that's section 16.2, page 125. Zoning permit required. We added text and the general statute citation in association with written notice of determination to be provided to the permit applicant. This means any type of determination can include zoning permits or conditional use permits or even subdivision plats. So a notice of determination needs to be made to every applicant. Even if you're turning that person down, you just don't say, well, I'm not going to provide you with a zoning permit. Now you have a written notice as to why you did not, provide them with the permit. Section 16.3, page 126, application for zoning permit. Remove the former subsection concerning the permit expiration, and now new vesting language has been added. Basically, the zoning permit can be good for a year. A site-specific plan, which is like a subdivision plat, can be good for 2 years, and then a multi-phase development should remain vested for a period of 7 years. Sorry, the site-specific is 5 years. Apologies. Section 16.3, page 127. This is language concerning revocation of development approvals. Basically, the revocation uses the same process by which it was approved. So if it was a administrative approval, then Hunter can do the revocation. If it's a conditional or special use permit, it has to go back to the hearing process. Number 10, we have language about discovery of violation and the delivery of the notice of violation. Number 11, section 17, page 129, the Board of Adjustment conflicts of interest statement. It defines conflict of interest. Number 12 is a new subsection concerning quasi judicial procedures. I just wanted that written in now, so that's section 17.1, page 129. And then there's section 17.4, page 130. We replaced current text with that of 160D, and it concerns the appeal procedure. They have 30 days to appeal. This is the one, number 14, that is not required by 160D, but your planning board chose to use it. It is what I call a may. There were musts, which are what most of this is, and then there's the may do. So this is the minor modifications of a special use permit. So basically, if your Board of Adjustment approves a special use permit, this would give the planner the ability to make a minor modification to that permit without having to go back through the hearing process if something came up along the way that did not work for the property owner.
Is there anything here to define what's minor,
Yeah, so
for consistency purposes?
So minor modifications includes reconfiguring parking design, changing landscaping or buffering arrangements, or slightly altering road and lot configurations for a development that has already gone through the full approval process. They're subject to the following limitations. Does not involve a change in use permitted or the density of the overall development. Does not increase the impacts generated by development on traffic, stormwater runoff, or similar impacts. Meets all other requirements and adjustment to landscape standards up to 10% of required landscaping. So this is one that not only is not required, but it's something that you can do that 160D not allow. So that would be a decision you guys would have to make. Section 18.3, page 137, action by planning board. So this is for the planning board consideration. The big change here is how they define properties that are abutting. So in the past, if you have to about properties that are abutting the property in question, you now do not count railroad or roads or anything else that are in between the property in question and the abutting properties. So you just act as if they're not there, and if they're within 100 feet. If that road wasn't there, then you would mail them that notice. And then, of course, the planning board's conflict of interest statement. We're almost there. Section 18.5, page 138. It's the consistency statements being adopted, and then so that's basically what saying a plain consistency statement, which they've already been requiring as law, but now it's kind of written in. And then finally, town council conflict of interest for amendments. And those were all the zoning amendments. Like I said, the planning board bylaws, in this case, it's written in here that the council does have to approve those. There weren't many changes except for the citation references. Then we have your subdivision ordinance. There's not as many changes for it as there were for the zoning ordinance, so I did not add those into, or didn't have a separate thing that kind of summarized those. But if you look on page 19 of the subdivision ordinance, there's new language about performance guarantees. This wasn't required as much as unless you had performance guarantee language in there. The main difference now is the performance guarantee cannot exceed 125% project cost. And then she added basically the state language into the ordinance. Let's see. The next change was on page 31. These penalties for violation. Basically, new language put in here that says that you can enter into a contract with a preliminary plat, but you can't have the final sale until the final plat is recorded. And then finally, page 33, this wasn't 160D, but it is language that which went ahead and updated to match what's required for variance as far as the hardship language. So that's been updated. And that's it. You guys have any questions for me?
May I ask a question? I have one question. What if you have a situation where somebody follows all the rules of the town and they get the zoning permit and just, or they deny the zoning permit for whatever reason, and yet then they go to the county because of bad communication from the county here, to get a building permit? Which controls?
Which controls, but you still have the ability to enforce your zoning ordinance.
If they have a county building permit,
Yeah, you could still, they're still violating your zoning ordinance.
still take action.
And I'll also mention, I've had that communication with Burke County to pretty much never issue a building permit unless they have it, preferably unless they have a zoning permit, and that's typically what process they follow.
That's good. Way to go, that's right.
Yeah.
That's happened today.
So in summary, these are all changes that are required by 160D, except for the minor modifications part, which you guys would have to decide whether or not you want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comment from the public? Is there any public out there? Is that what Gary's going to look for?
I don't think
there are.
Okay. All right, well, then, all right, I'll officially close then this public hearing. We'll go to 6C, consider approval of 160D updates.
Since we just got this information, I'm assuming Hunter, Logan, and Redmond have all been privy to this information prior, especially with the Board of Adjustments. And I just want to give them the opportunity to kind of weigh in anything that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, I will mention, this process has been that, a regional presentation was given to planning board, I think here in January. We presented with all the must and may changes. That's when they made the recommendation of that one administrative decision that was the authority 160D that allowed the town to put that in there. During the May planning board meeting, they were presented the same draft you guys were, and they made the and reviewed it, made the recommendation to you guys, and that's why we went ahead and put it on council tonight. I will also mention, I think, Alice, that we do have to table the decision regardless, because of the public hearing with 160D and the way for the state, so that you guys would actually consider this during the April meeting. But we went ahead and got the public hearing actually out of the way in presentations. But other than that, everything that's in there has to be in there, and it's up to comply. Nothing else changed that with our current land use in any type of zoning district and their permitted uses and so on. A lot of this was just stuff that had to be complied with 160 and updated definition. So there was nothing else kind of changed that would have changed any type of current way we we, administer or due process outside of what's required.
So are you saying that the Board of Adjustments is in agreement to put in the may language in addition to the must language?
Yeah, that was their recommendation. That one other section about the administrative changes.
I agree. I think the may changes are more important than the must. Must is just to confer with state law, but the may changes gives you some discretion, which I think is necessary.
Yeah, and the whole intent of that is it helps from a development standpoint, and especially if it's either taking it back to them for special use or, taking it back to them for you guys if it's some type of larger development, regarding a PUD or major subdivision. It doesn't hinder that development process if it's something that can be altered within the terms of what the ordinance states.
So do we need a motion to table this?
No, we'll just, I apologize. I should not have put that on there.
It's not a
See,
decision matter.
yeah, we'll adopt it at the next meeting.
All right. All right, we'll go to old business. 7A, consider approval of contract for renovation work on the tower. Mackie Johnson.
Based on the documentation that my office generated for the bidders, based on previous discussion, council meeting, Wales Builders submitted a low bid proposal. And their bid proposal was $41,000. They did provide a bid bond which secures the bid for 30 days. They are going to provide a performance bond to assure that if for some reason, I don't know if you know what a performance bond is, you probably do, but if for some reason they couldn't perform the work, the bonding entity would come in and complete the work. And I think the bid proposal based on the documents is a very good bid. And my recommendation would be if council does want to move forward with this project, my recommendation would be if they do decide to stay with the bid proposal among the bidders. If you have any questions about the work, we have the drawings. I don't know if you can view them or not, but providing lighting. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to make this short or long, but that's the status of the project at this time. We requested bid proposals, we got bid proposals, this was the way bid proposal. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have, or comments.
No, and I'll add on top of that. So tonight, what we'd be looking to do is accept the low bidder. Assuming we do that, assuming we go with Well Builders, we'd have Mr. Johnson create an AIA agreement for the town and the contractor. That would outline the 10 scopes of work that we submitted when we signed with Matthew. That would outline the improvements, what they plan to do, outline the cost, not to exceed $41,000. Then what we would do is we'd come back in April and approve that contract.
And the agreement would be an AIA 101 stipulated sum agreement. In other words, it'll be a typical AI, I use a typical, of course, it'll be edited for this project, but I use a typical AIA documentation and the best it does.
But the contract price is $41,000 plus $1,400.
$41,000.
$41,000 plus $1,400. Contract walk. We're doing that on.
Sorry, Ben asked something.
The sidewalk is not part, it's not part of the base bid, sir.
No, I actually asked for that to be added on just to see if that's something we had. One of the discussions council had was, do we leave it open or do we close it? If we close it, we have to have some type of walk around. So that's why that was added on top, but that's not a requirement by council. That was just there if we did want it.
In fact, I think in the future, if you want to do some other sidewalks, you might want to see how you want to tie them in and things of that nature. But the $1,400 sidewalk was an alternate, not part of the base bid, sir.
Yes. Sure. And Ben, what was your question?
after approval in April, when would this work start?
That would be up to well builders.
What we would do is, once council awards the project, and I would then generate the owner contractor agreement. We would send it to Lane Builders. They would attach their insurance, they would attach their bonds. They would then send it back for me to review. I would then provide it to you, the owner. And then if you want, legal to review it or whatever, and if you're comfortable with it, Lane would have executed the document when they send it to me. Once you review it and execute it and send it back to me, I would then write Lane Builders a notice to proceed. And all of that,
What timeline do they have to finish the work?
this is probably truly a couple weeks of paperwork, so to speak.
No, and once they start work, how long?
They're 30 days. Their bid proposal was 30 days. Sir. So once they get a notice, I write them a notice to proceed. Let's just say it was April 15th. I'd add 30 days to that, and I would tell them their date of substantial completion would be April 15th plus 30 days. That's the normal procedure that I would follow, sir.
So I gotta ask the obvious question.
Yes.
So Lell Builders, that's Rexlow, right?
That's Rexley. That is.
Okay, and so Rexlow's and I don't know his official title, but he's with HHDA, and this project is being funded by HHDA. I have a question for Redmond about conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest. I just want to find out from a legal standpoint where that falls.
How many people did you solicit bids from?
Pardon me, sir.
How many people did you solicit bids from?
We got a proposal from Moss Marlowe Construction.
How many people did you send proposals out to?
For
Who's the third?
David E. Looper. I don't want to get too much minutia here. The gentleman that was working on their bid proposal or something came down ill. And I got the text the day of the bid. But the second proposal was 68.
Why much higher?
68.6.
$27,000 higher.
$27,600 higher, and then if you add the concrete wall, the difference is $2,600 additional dollars.
You know, I feel Rex is professional enough that he can separate his HHA and his construction. That's the best bid. It's the lowest responsible bid.
He provided a bid bond and he's going to provide
Performance bond.
on the project. This is at the council. You know, I'm not trying to have you interrupt anything.
I just want to make sure that we stay out of any kind of legal problems with this. You know, I'm not opposed to going to the lowest bid, but I just want to make sure that we've crossed all our T's and dotted all of our I's.
That's what we got Mackie for. We have it, and Mackie's in the same boat with us. In fact, you'll be in the front.
Pardon me, sir?
We're in the same boat if it's wrong. You'll be in the front of the boat. You go down first. Before we do it all.
I invited the documentation that Logan sent me as far as the processes. So we have followed the processes that was outlined in
And you're satisfied with all the protocol?
in my process that Logan sent to me. My obligation to you to generate drawings to come to you and show them to you, put out for bids. And once we do and Lael's going to have to get a building permit. This is a permitted project. So they'll have, just for your information, you'll have to get a building permit and there will be inspections during the project. So it's not like we're just kind of doing it, so to speak. So.
Okay, and then the other question, did Ben have something? Let him go ahead.
Ben?
How, if we went ahead with any cruises this year, how would that affect the schedule?
What is the date of the first cruising? Assuming we can even do it.
It's usually Memorial Day.
Right.
That's Memorial Day, that's the 5th Saturday in the month. Right before Memorial Day.
I mean, that 30-day schedule is basically right on that day.
Yes, but that would be definitely the next one probably.
Well, would that, Just, I mean, I guess this is more speculation on your part, Mackie. Would that in any way, do you think, prevent a cruise in if they were still?
I would not think so, and one thing we could ask the contractor to do is to barricade off if there is any work still going on. The most dangerous part of the work is, well, buildings are always up in there, is the reconstruction of the old rotted out roof. I'm not trying to turn my back on you. Reconstruction of the old rotted out roof. There's two primary parts. Reconstruction of the old roof, putting a new roof on the building with gutters and downspouts, and then basically policing up the masonry. The interior demo, going inside and turning out those old rotted down steps. Nobody, the general public shouldn't be in there. But, and I would think that the mason probably be using a Skytrack. I don't know if you're a scaffold or Skytrack. I can't speak to that.
But if you give those to proceed on the 15th of April, then it should be finished by May the 15th. If our first event is on Memorial Day, it should be finished, and what is not needs to be barricaded in.
Yeah, right. And I'll go, once you award it, you know, I'll do the agreement that day and take care of the
The
rest.
sooner we get it started, the less chance you have.
Right, based on your guidance, I'll pursue this as rapidly as possible. I won't wait a couple of weeks to do the agreement. I'll pursue this as rapidly as possible. It would normally take Rex several days, to get his insurance and bonds. Normally, those entities require a copy of the contract, the agreement, before they'll issue the insurance and bonds to him.
So in here, in the scopes that we've got listed here, I see phrasing a lot of times that says determine best way or determine if. So in this, you're suggesting that we are going to get all of that in writing, because I don't want to I want to know what the contractor is expected to do in these situations before they start, instead of just, kind of, we have one expectation and then them having another. I just want to make sure that's addressed.
As far as the scope of the project, give you some general guidance. It's primarily two parts. One of them is, like I say, three parts. First of all, demolishing out the interior building, right out stairs and all that. Secondly, we're going to put a new roof construction and storm drainage and gutters and downspouts. A lot of the old roof framing is right out, and that has to be replaced. There are, new roof framing plans, sections, details for all that construction. We put an allowance in the bid of $6,000. Those are going to be policing up the masonry. We put an allowance in there of $6,000 to police up the masonry. And what we want to do with the masonry, our biggest choice is we want to keep the natural look of the building as much as possible. I mean, the tower is the tower. So our goal with that is basically to make the masonry safe. We're not going to re-brick the building. There's old holes we've got to fill in. Some of these corbels are falling off and things of that nature. Our basic goal is to police up the masonry so that the masonry is as safe as possible. We don't want bricks falling down and things of that nature.
Well, of course, so let me address that part that you brought up. So in here, it's talking about the tooth brick walls where there's jagged edges and everything. So are you saying that as part of the scope and the contract that all of that is going to be clean, or is it still going to be jagged?
What we want to do, I don't mind, this I'm speaking for maybe from an aesthetic standpoint, I don't mind leaving it jagged, but I don't want bricks that are going to fall out. Some of the bricks we might tear out and clean up a little bit to make it well. Some of it we may put new brick in. We've got old brick we can take and relocate and things of that nature. This, quote, policing up the masonry is, I'd say the first thing to do is want it safe. Mm-hmm. And second of all, we want to leave it as natural, as existing as possible.
I understand that. I guess where I'm going to is, to your point, the structural integrity. So I guess I want to make sure that our expectation of the council and the expectation of the contractor are one and the same, in that originally the impression that we were giving the direction is where the brick is all jagged, that was going to be cleaned up. Are we saying that will be done? And if doing so, is it going to affect the structural integrity of the building? Is it going to make any brick less unsafe?
We're not going to tear out any we're not gonna tear down any structural walls. We're not going to, these are 16-inch existing masonry walls. We're gonna clean it up, police it up and make it safe. We're not gonna tear anything down. We're not going to.
But where it was attached to the previous building and it was kind of cut off, are we gonna clean that up, straight corners, lines and everything, or is it still gonna be kind of jagged?
There'll probably be some, not perfectly straight, there'll be some in and out, but we're not gonna leave any loose brick. We're not gonna leave, our first goal with the masonry as it is on the outside is make it safe.
Okay, and that's our first goal as well.
That's
So
our
now,
primary.
talking about the looks of the things, we're talking about the south wall where we were discussing the mural. So we discussed before about leaving it its natural, point or putting stucco up to prepare it for a mural. So I guess where we voted previously was to leave it in its natural state. Okay, but that south wall brick is not all picture perfect, and
Right.
is it my understanding that that brick was meant to be interior brick as opposed to exterior brick?
When they originally did it, if you basically look at the tower, these things look at the front, and you see all the nice brick laid up and things of that nature, jointed out, that was exposed brick, and they did a neat job. When the old 1917 building was being wrapped around the tower, the masons just laid the brick, and that's the reason it looks so rugged. It's one thing that I'll speak personally about the mural a little bit. My a mural can be a very nebulous thing at this point. I think as to what you do with that wall, you need some input from the mural. I don't know if it's gonna be 8 feet square or 20 feet square. I don't know if they feel comfortable leaving it and doing plastering and going brick. I don't know if they feel comfortable removing some of the plaster. It's hard to do anything with that wall to prepare it with the mural. I think what you need to do is get guidance from mural people and back into what you need to the wall. Because I'm afraid anything we do to the wall now to prepare it for the mural would be wrong.
So
No matter what we do.
the question that I'm trying to steer you
Okay, I'm
to,
sorry, sir.
the question I'm trying to steer you to is that south wall is interior brick.
It was interior brick. It was.
Okay, so with it being exposed to the elements, obviously something will probably need to be done to secure that brick, since it was never intended to be that and has been exposed to the elements for years. Do you, if we're gonna spend this money to get this done, I wanna make sure there's gonna be some longevity to it, that this isn't gonna be something in a year from now it just crumbled.
And as far as policing up the brick, any brick that's falling loose or gonna have to be policed up. Now, one of the other things that we have in the contract too is once the masonry is policed up, we have that exterior water repellent is supposed to be sprayed on the entire exterior of the building. Now, this old brick is still pretty open. It's still gonna be, it's not gonna be like the front. Now, I'm telling you, once we finish policing up, it's still not gonna look pretty, for lack of a word.
So the bricks that aren't even, that are all kinds of, it's still gonna look like that. So the council needs to understand that it's not like we're magically gonna be replacing brick and moving around, that it's still gonna look what it is.
Yeah.
And whether or not we put a mural on it, with the exception of covering it in stucco, the mural could highlight the fact that the brick is not exactly even.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. I don't wanna try to do any mural preparation now because anything I do would be wrong.
And then with the waterproofing that you're talking about to put on this entire thing, so can you give us an idea of how long that would last? What kind of maintenance we would need to do going forward with that? Is that something we'll ever have to do?
This is called damp proofing, and it's gonna be probably a clear silicone-based product. Now, as an example, on the front tower where the brick are nice and neat with the toe joints and things of that nature, it's gonna sustain better than the rugged part of the tower, so to speak, sir. But normally, I would think on something like this, you probably want to damp proof it every 5 to 7 years. It's not something you have to do every year. It's not something you put off 20 years.
And what kind of cost can you estimate if we were to do that again? Let's say it had been done 5 to 7 years ago, we want to do it. Can you give us an idea of what?
Well, you're asking an architect, not a contractor, but if I had to take a wide number, I'd say a couple grand.
Okay.
Buy it and, see, you gotta understand that this tower, even though it's small, you gotta get on it with a sky track, so you gotta miss things of that. It's not like just taking a little sprayer and, Any other questions? I'll be glad to answer anything else.
No, the one thing I'll say is with the scope of, issues and improvements, so we had 10 when we sent Mackey out to solicit contractors. What I would like to see, and I think that it would be really great for not only council, but HHDA, the other side of this, because again, they're paying for this too, is to have all 10 of these list exactly what we're doing, what the expectations are. That way, council's not upset, HHDA is not upset. We know what we're getting. Everyone can read it, we can see it. But in the AIA contract, I would like to see all 10 written out exactly what we're doing. That way, everyone can look at it, read it, see it, put the final cost on it. Cost shall not exceed
Check off what's done.
41,000. Yeah. That way, no one gets confused. No one can say, "Oh, well, you said you were doing this."
And if you'd like to share this information with the HCA prior to, I don't know what your relationship is, I don't know what sort of, I don't know the relationship, but if you would like to get them to review the drawings and things of this nature prior to approval, I mean, I'll be glad to speak to them. Whatever you gentlemen decide, I'll be glad to try to pursue it in any manner.
And I guess the only other concern that I have is what we budgeted. We budgeted 50,000 for the entire project. Rex came in at the low bidder at 41,000, and then of course we have your fee in that as well. So it's my understanding that puts us right at 50,000. Is that correct? So my concern is, how do we want to address, because in construction, being around construction, I know that change orders and things can happen. How does council feel with any potential charges on that if it were to go above that? I will say typically when you're doing construction, if you have plumbing, if you have electrical, if you have a lot of wood, sometimes you can find rot and other things that can come up. Since this is entirely a brick structure, with the exception, I really can't see anything coming up to cause a greater reason for an expense above the quote, other than something that was caused by the contractor themselves. If they start to hammer on some of the brick or cut some brick away and it causes, a wall to fall or something, you know what I mean? But maybe that's just me. So I don't feel, let me rephrase that. I feel that we should put a limit on it and basically say, this was the budget, this was the quote, with very little chance of it going above that. We should leave it at this price. Anything that's over that is up to the responsibility of the contractor. I don't know. I'm just curious what you guys think on that.
I think we're leaving it as it is being. Call, we agreed 50,000. We do half, they do half. I say we knock it off right there, not go anymore.
I said, I do want to get it fixed, but I say, I'm with you. But we'll stay at 50,000.
Well, I think what Cole's asking is, what if it's 52,000 or 53,000? Who's paying for the overage?
Or what if it's 70,000? Or what if, who knows? Because in the last year, I know for a fact that construction expenses are at least 30% higher than they were before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I understand there's bonds and things to secure quotes and all of that, but I also want to protect the town's finances and interest in this. And I'm a hope for the best, plan for the worst kind of situation. And if we plan, this was the budget and this is our budget and it goes over budget, who's left holding the bag? Is it the town? Is it still split with HHCA? Are they prepared to help split any cost over that? What do we do in that situation? I think that's something we definitely need to think about.
Our maximum exposure on this contract is 42.4. You can't go any higher unless you approve it, go higher.
Pardon me, sir.
Our maximum exposure on the contract, Mackie, is $42,400.
41,000 is the bid.
Well, I thought if we do a contingency, talking about presented here, the maximum exposure we'd have for this proposal is 42.4.
41,000.
He's talking about adding the 1,400 for the
I'm
company.
talking about
Oh, okay, oh, yeah, if you
The two
want,
numbers.
yeah, but,
42.4.
right,
That's our maximum exposure. can never go higher than that unless you authorize.
Right, and if you don't authorize the sidewalk, it's 41.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you don't authorize the sidewalk, it's
So it
41.
can never go higher than
The
that.
sidewalk you're talking about is just to go around it, is that
Right,
correct?
it's a 4-foot sidewalk surrounding the building.
I say let's just go with the, 42.4 and can't go any higher.
Well, I think we don't need to do anything until we get the written information about the scopes. I don't even think that we need to, go ahead and make that decision today.
I'm not saying, we
Yeah.
vote on, make a decision right now, I'm just saying, that's what I'm looking at, is cut it off there.
And if we do the 42.4, when you add in the engineering fee, we're still 1,400 over our budget, and that's that goes back to the question I asked, how do we cover that 1,400? Does the town pay 100%? Does HHDA, did they fundraise enough to cover that extra? I mean, that's the
I
question.
thought that was an agreement. Originally, I mean, it was voted on before my time.
Well, now, the 1,400, that was simply, I don't want anybody misinterpreting that. Even throughout the bidding process, there was the idea, could it be closed, is it gonna stay open? So the only reason that's even on there is I said, Mackie, just in the off chance, because I don't want to have to ask you to do this again. I said, just in the off chance, we do have to keep it closed. What are our options? Well, you probably want something they can walk around. That's the only reason that was in there, just in case. So I wouldn't even consider that number unless you're gonna consider closing the tower. If we're gonna leave it open, which is what we decided on last meeting and meeting before, that 1,400 is irrelevant.
And a sidewalk is something that if you choose to do, I know you're probably planning some other work in this area. I mean, that could be done later, I mean.
And pay for half part of it.
Yeah, it's be part of anything.
Okay.
So, but here again,
So
the
look at,
base bid to repair, the base bid to do repair and maintenance on the tower is $41,000. If the sidewalk is something that you could or could not do, and that's entirely up to you, gentlemen.
So Logan, what are you looking for today? Would you prefer us to make a motion to approve, or would you rather us wait till we have the written information on those 10 scopes of work and approve it at the next meeting?
Well, I mean, this is what I'll say. I mean, at this point, the path that this lays out, it says, starting with K, this is for Mackey's purposes and for the town. If a successful low bidder is selected by the town, the architect will verify the insurance and other credentials. Architect will prepare an AIA agreement for the town and the contractor to sign. It will clearly stipulate the contractor's responsibilities and provide a written description of the payment process that will apply to the project. So to me, the contractor is not gonna go through the 1 through 10s until you've selected the bid.
Okay.
But if you want these answers to the questions beforehand, before you even select the bid, I mean, you can do it that way. You can ask Rex, or whoever, how do you plan to address this?
I should say that the AIAB 101 stipulated some agreement. It's about a 7-page agreement, and it deals with, in fact, the drawings that I generated that he did his bid proposal on. Well, at the end, you have a list of documents that are basically incorporated as part of the agreement. And there will be that agreement, his bid proposal, his bonds, his insurance. These drawings that I generated, they all become part of the agreement.
Will he file anything that shows the scope of his work?
Basically, these drawings that he bid on,
No, sorry.
yeah, these drawings that
Does
he
he have
bid
anything
on,
showing how he's gonna address those issues?
right, these drawings that he bid on basically define his work. And these drawings are incorporated as part of the agreement.
But I think we could still put a written, there's nothing saying we can't.
No, there's no such, we can't put written, basically.
I think what Cole's trying to get at, the thing to be determined, we wanna know what is determined.
I usually don't like signing a contract until I know A through Z what I'm signing on, instead of just taking somebody's word. But my question, I guess, to Redmond and to Logan is, would you feel more comfortable if we go ahead and select a low bidder now to get that process started? Or would you feel more comfortable if we get it written and then get that signed in?
So if Rex or, low builders, if they were comfortable coming to the next meeting, both being ready to, again, select the bid, so we pause tonight. We could select the bid, but he could already have this, he could have this address. So we could do both in one night, if we wanted to, if he was willing to do that. If not, you would have to postpone, let him come back, then select the bid, then push it off another month.
There is a chance if we wait too, it's gonna cost more.
Well, and plus you get into the cruise ends, you might disrupt 2 instead of 1, or potentially none, but
Well-
still, it would still be in the background.
So
It's still barricaded off where
Yeah.
people won't get hurt, they stay away from it.
Basically, we generated, in fact, Logan's got a copy of all these drawings and photographs with notes and comments on. This is what Rex based his bid proposal on, the documentation that I have generated. And if you gentlemen, I know Logan's got a copy that you're welcome to go through and look at and, whatever.
Derek, what's your thoughts on this? Because I know you do.
Well,
We're gonna have some fun.
yeah, so this is my thoughts on it. We're about 95% there or whatever we need to get. I think we're better off to go ahead and get it approved sooner than later. If not, then you're gonna be middle of April next month, and then you're gonna be starting sometime in May, and then, kind of like Mike on this, it could get, I don't think it's gonna get much more expensive, but you never know. And plus with contractors hard to get right now, that contractor may fill that spot up,
Next bid was what, $27,000
And
higher?
Redmond knows this too. I mean, right now, if you secure them pretty quick, if they get another bid or another offer, then you may be sitting here in May, June, July, sitting here in the fall.
So it's your opinion that if we move forward, you're gonna feel comfortable if we go and select a low bidder tonight?
Well, and that's the other thing, just because you select the low bidder doesn't mean you sign the contract and you're committed. It simply gives you the ability to negotiate with the contract. Set all this up.
So we can select the low bidder, but
Yes.
still get the 10 scopes work before we ever sign the contract.
Next month, that's what I would advise.
So you advise going to select the low bidder tonight? Okay.
I say you get them locked in. If not, then you run into an issue where Cole could just
We're gonna
be
set a
fall
cutoff
first
on that
next year.
tonight.
Sorry, what?
A cutoff on the amount. He bid 41. Are we gonna stop it at a certain level?
His bid proposal,
It's good
Rex's
for-
bid proposal to do the work in these drawings is $41,000.
You won't, you can't go higher than that unless you do change orders.
Right, unless there was a change order, we discovered something we didn't know about. I don't know what you see in that.
And I think Redmond addressed this a while ago. If it goes over a certain amount of money, we've got to bring it back anyways to the table. So, $1,000 or $2,000 probably not, but if it's going to be $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000, then that has to come, we have to bring that back to us.
Yeah, I'm not, if there was need to be a change order, I'm not gonna just approve it. It'll have to come before council.
All right,
And
so,
even if there's a change order, the deal with HSDA, it was formalized and spoken many, many times here, they're going half. So if it comes back and it's $4,000, we don't go forward unless they bring in $2,000.
Okay.
Or whatever it happens to be.
so I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion, because in the effort to move this along.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and make a motion to approve the low bidder of Well Builders for 41,000.
We've got a question?
Go ahead.
At the beginning of the project, I know you talked about at the end of the project, if it wasn't completed yet, that you would secure it off. I think we need to secure it off at the beginning of the project.
Oh, he's
Same
not,
here.
yeah, he's not, we're gonna, we don't want people going.
But we have a lot of children that league action ball, and
But we'll-
there's always
there'll be a
someone going in the
barricade
parking lot.
when it gets dark.
I was thinking we could do something for that.
I just want to make sure that we're gonna cover it. Thank you.
Good call. I like it. All right, so the motion to approve the low bidder, $41,000 not to exceed. Does that cover y'all for what you need for the motion?
Base bid of $41,000.
Yes.
All right.
I'll call for a vote.
Cole, yes.
Mike, yes.
Jerry, yes.
Derek, yes.
Ben, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maggie.
Okay, I will go ahead and generate the owner contractor agreement based on AIA D 101. And, then we'll move forward like that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You gentlemen have a pleasant evening.
Thanks, sir.
7B, presentation of facility improvements.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he is. He's got some pictures for us.
While he's talking, just to let you know, the closed session's not gonna be needed. Laurie's not here, will not be coming.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Are we ready for 7D?
Yes.
Sir,
Yeah, you have
wait on
some.
you.
Wait on me.
Wait on you. You and Becky over there,
Oh,
Gabby.
gosh, I'm waiting on my hair to grow back. Okay, so yes, if you go to 7D, so these are just the last two slides of the PowerPoint. You'll get the initial slide, but just go to the next one. So this is the community center before and after photos, the entertainment areas. So before, you've got on the left, the two pictures. You've got three on the right, the new ones. These pictures now have the soundboards. That's what we were waiting on last month. So some of the things we did, purchased a chair rack. It's not the same here, but that was one of the issues we had is people using chairs. Painted walls, columns, restrooms, and ductwork, bug stripped and waxed the floor, and then added sound panels to reduce echo from meetings. That was 100% paid for by FCRA. Moving to the back page, this is the kitchen of the community center. So before pictures on the left, after on the right. Painted walls and ductwork, added an industrial seat station. Now this is temporary. This was loaned to us by Walk and Roll Activities League. So that if they do ever leave, that could go. But again, for now, it's for us to use for our PPUs. Synchronized edition. We moved the ice maker from the second floor, just right up here at the women's restroom, down to the community center. We felt it would fit better there, given the events, give people access to that kind of ice. And then we did full broadcast epoxy flooring, which is what we did in the gym and auditorium restroom. Any questions on it? Well, I will tell you this, the sound panels are extremely expensive. We will have a special policy for people to sign. It's incredibly easy for pins, safety pins, so happy birthday signs, anything like that won't be allowed. They're roughly $100 a piece, so we'll have to make sure if they are damaged in any way, the people who damage them, we'll have to replace them. So, other than that, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. 8, new business, 8A, first draft presentation of section 4 of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, Aaron Shoddy. There she is. We probably left you downstairs.
Well, you did, but I made it. So what I've given y'all today is just a draft of essentially it's the meat of the plan. This final plan will be a full, probably 50-page document with an appendix for the site-specific plan for the new park. But I kind of just wanted to walk through the recommendations with y'all and get your input, with the plan being that next month I'll come back with the final plan and ask you to adopt it in preparation for the Part F grant cycle. So I'm just gonna run through these. Y'all feel free to interrupt me if you have anything. So the Hildebran Community Park, the only existing park at this point, relatively new. I don't have it, and relatively built out. I don't have a whole lot of recommendations for it. There's a lot of amenities there already. But the recommendations I do have are, you've got a sidewalk on the opposite side of the street from the entrance to the park on Main Avenue. So we recommended adding a crosswalk there, maybe with some sort of flashing, there's a little bit of a blind curve there. So some sort of safe way to cross the street for people who are walking to the park. And especially as y'all add the sidewalk further on down Main Avenue. So I guess that would connect from 70 to the apartments to the park. So just to finalize that connection, to add a crosswalk there, or some sort of
That would be great, but there need to be some flashing lights if people start across up in the curve. Where you gonna put the crosswalk at? At the driveway going up? Or at the lower end where you hit the trail, walk the trail to go up, where you come through the gate?
Yeah. Probably,
I think it'd be better suited down there, closer to your
yeah.
house.
Right there, cut off from my house. I think it'd be good, I think the flashing lights, if you got a button, they just hit, they start to go across, to put flashing lights, but people come around that curve like
Yeah, you're
idiots.
right. And I tried to cross that street there and I'm pretty quick, but I tried to imagine I'm a person in a wheelchair or something and it was not looking good for me, so. Yeah, you're probably right, the other end of the park. And I'll leave that to an engineer or DOT if they update that road, may be willing to help with some of those improvements. But we wanna make sure.
And that may be something we might need to consider adjusting the speed limit at a future time if the crosswalk goes in.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be helpful. The other stuff about the existing park is that there really aren't a whole lot of amenities for people with different ability levels. And so I'm thinking specifically physical impairments, people in wheelchairs or with special needs would have trouble. Obviously, there's nothing you can do about the walking track. It's gonna be steep. But you can make sure that, if you're on the walking track, you can get into the playground. So that the track walks up to the playgrounds, but then if you're on a wheelchair, you can't get over the playground barrier or roll across it. With that said, the play structures are not necessarily structures that can be played on by somebody in a wheelchair either. So, kind of take that recommendation with a grain of salt. I'm not necessarily saying that you need to redo all of the playground surfacing if it's not gonna be used by those users anyway, but just something to kind of look at as you're making updates. And it says here brown clay elements, of just, some sort of something that can be played on without having to climb onto it. So, and that could probably fit within some of the existing playground areas. Beautification, just generally, adding flowers and trees. I was looking specifically at the park entrance that's right there on Main Avenue. I think it's attractive already, but it could be a whole lot more attractive if you just lined it with some landscaping.
It's looking a lot better now than it did.
Is it?
Absolutely.
I was out there the other day and they were mowing and it did look real nice. But that's all I've got on that existing park. So those are kind of just, and I'll break this down further in the final plan and it'll have kind of short-term and long-term recommendations. None of this stuff is super pressing. It's just the kind of thing that as you're working on projects in that area, as you have the resources to spend on the park, just kind of keep it in mind. The gymnasium and the Albert Park, the whole complex. I know the way this is divided up is a little confusing because I've got the Parkhurst complex separate from the tennis court. But they're kind of separate things. So the gymnasium, actually, let me just go through the recommendations in order. I'm on this page 24. Enhancing the landscaping along South Center Street on that sidewalk. Adding benches for anyone who's using the sidewalk. And I think when you add landscaping for the new park, that's a good opportunity to tie it in with the landscaping that's out at the street and kind of invite people in. I'm looking at you because you're our design guy. Now in here, for any of y'all who may have been at the public meeting we just had, there was a little bit of, there was some discussion about the demolition of that rear concessions building. So for anyone there's the two buildings back there, one storage, the one closer to First Street is the concessions building. I think we kind of landed on though, as long as everyone who's in that building now has space for storage and concessions, that they're comfortable with the idea of demolition if it's to be replaced. What I wrote into the plan here is to consider demolition because I don't want to tie you to anything. I mean, If you get into the engineering studies and find that you wanna retrofit it, more power to you. From the preliminary budgeting we've looked at, though, that's not likely to be the case. And then I've got, on page 25, I've got a couple of things just highlighted there, because I wanted to ask y'all. I generally like these plans to kind of be a little bit of a wish list, just kind of cover everything that you may want to pursue in the future. And so I know there's stuff in the gymnasium. I'm trying to focus primarily on recreation focus, so we don't necessarily need to get into the auditorium a whole lot, or this building really, unless we have recreation amenities. But I'm thinking the gymnasium and outside, are there any kind of wish list items that should be included here?
I'll probably improve the gym.
Yeah, the gym or anything within the Parkhurst complex.
Mhm.
But I'm assuming the gym, yeah. That point 4 there, utilize vacant space within gymnasium building. That's that back part of the building, closest to First Street Southeast, and that could be a meeting room really easily, unless there's something else that needs to be done with it. I think updating that for a meeting room is better than having it unused. Aging systems. Logan, you mentioned aging systems to me on this, and I can't remember what you told me in terms of if it was HVAC or electrical, so I kind of just left it vague for now.
In terms of the municipal complex?
Yeah, in terms of the gymnasium, anything that, I guess, 5-10 year wish list items.
I mean, retrofitting that back room was the biggest one.
Is the big thing.
We would like to add a door to one of the other rooms and basically create 2 smaller locker room areas.
Okay.
If so that's something we need to add at least 1 door and then just 2 sets of lockers.
Is that in that rear area?
So one's gonna be right at the handicap restroom, and then the other is currently storage for, EDYA.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's the first section of their storage, they've got additional sections.
Okay. All right, so I think that's good for the Parkhurst complex, unless anybody thinks of anything, for the next meeting. Logan's got my phone number and email, and feel free to reach out to me, or reach out to Logan and he can pass it on. I'll skip on over to the Newtown Park. So the general public input we got on this one was that, I'm just gonna kind of repeat what I said down below, I'm sorry for those of you who already heard it. But the general goals for this park are, number 1, to have a central gathering space that people can gather with groups or find solitude and enjoy a meal. The other use being events, specifically the cruise-ins and HHDA events that are already happening. But there's also an opportunity for the town to expand its events, utilizing the stage that I'll talk about in a minute. And then the other uses, looking at how this park can complement the adjacent uses, the baseball fields, as well as the gymnasium. So with all that said, the most popular amenities for this park, by far the most popular amenity was the walking trail. Having a level walking route that's paved, that can be utilized by people, you know, in a wheelchair or that just have trouble with uneven ground.
Walkers, stuff like that.
Right. And that's not feasible at the existing park or really on the existing sidewalk network either. It's just not designed for people with disabilities. So I think that's a really important aspect of this park. Covered picnic area is also recommended. That was a popular one, and that complements the use of the gymnasium well. It can also be used just as a sheltered area for any sort of event. It can be rented out. Splash pad, There was a lot of strong support for a splash pad. We also had some write-ins, people wanting a swimming pool. But there's just so much more expense and maintenance and liability associated with that, we've recommended a splash pad as a more modest amenity. Still lots of fun. Small outdoor stage for events. We have, we're still looking at where to site this, but there would be a small outdoor stage on the park property. And I emphasize the word small. It would probably be about maybe a little bit bigger than the temporary stage that's been being used. But with this park being just a little bit over an acre, we can't monopolize the whole area with this stage. So we kind of have to just look at making sure that it's a proper scale.
Well, and Aaron, if you don't care if I interrupt.
Go for it.
This is something me and her have talked about a lot too, is I would like to see the stage have basically a secondary use. Has anyone been to downtown Hickory and seen their new amphitheater stage?
Yes.
If you have, basically what they do when they don't have performances is they've got rocking chairs up there and they've got tables. You can go, you can eat dinner. You can do a lot of different things. So what I'd like to see is not only it being accessible for a stage, but also when we're not, because again, 5 days out of the year, we got another 360 days we gotta use it. So one of the things I'd like to see is maybe some, wheelchair, ADA accessibility, and then just make sure it's sizable enough where it's got, the ability to be used almost as a second picnic shelter or pavilion.
Well, the good thing about having a ramp is it would help any bands that want to play their wheel equipment up as opposed to lifting it, make it simple. What you're talking about over at Union Square in downtown Hickory, I will tell you over the course of the last year through the pandemic, my family has eaten outdoor meals there quite a bit, just to, with all the issues with indoor dining restaurants. So we've had a lot of to-go food out there. That's been nice. And then when you're talking about potentially having the splash pad for, parents to kind of sit in some place that's covered, an additional place to sit and cover and potentially have sight lines to the splash pad, that makes sense. One thing while I'm talking, I want to throw back to with the walking trail, and this may be something Gary potentially has a question with as well, as far as security and lighting, because you mentioned people with currently there are a lot of people that use the sidewalk system coming down 70, going up past B&B. There are people that walk on that sidewalk all hours of the day, daytime or dark. I see them frequently, and the sidewalk is terrible. So I do agree that it needs to be better fitted for ADA, but just anybody that uses it. So if those people are going to start walking at the park as opposed into that network of sidewalks we already have, the issue with lighting, and that doesn't have to be something we address in this phase of the Part F grant. That could be something we look at later. But from a security standpoint, if people were to use that as opposed to using the current sidewalks, are there any other security issues that Gary can kind of throw out other than lighting that we may want to be aware of?
The public access parks, within the county already, they have daylight savings and their times that are preset and the gates are locked. So those parks are secure. Our parks are not secure. We do have them open and closed with daylight savings, but they're still not secure because anybody can get up there at any time. I don't think we can secure our parks. The lighting is the biggest thing. I'm not a big fan of landscaping because there's too many places that people can hide. We want to keep it as open as we can and as well lit as we can. We've got a partial, or we don't, but the school system, I don't know who owns that. We have a partial walking track around the first field and the school playground. If we could incorporate the other side to continue a continuation of the walk area around the other field and the T-ball field, that might be something to look at too. That's just giving them more than an eighth of a mile, a quarter of a mile.
Yeah, and it's hard to fit a quarter of a mile even on that
Correct. It
side,
is.
so.
That would increase us possibly up to 3/4 of a mile. So.
Aaron, I'll add, in our discussion too, just, once again, kind of bringing this all together, is when we have a pedestrian plan that, we have some of those facilities that we've applied for grant for, like kind of the one going down Main. With that being said, it was kind of a long-term thing with, one, improving our current sidewalk, but making sure this part's connected via sidewalk, crosswalks and everything, the other part, and then you also gonna have a loop down Main coming back up 70. So then you encompass both parts along a main thoroughfare type pedestrian loop. And then they would have access on this walking trail, potentially like you already mentioned, you're tying into that, but they'll also have a larger pedestrian type trail, including the park and current and proposed pedestrian facilities.
Mini greenway.
I do know we have joggers on a regular basis right here.
Well, the issue is,
That be out here in front of the building, every morning around 5:30, you see them, and they take off, they jog the whole.
A couple of them are the contractors who will probably be bidding on some of this.
Like I say, you see them about every morning around 5 o'clock or so,
Yeah.
they'll be here in front of the building. And there's anywhere from 3 of them to 6 of them.
well, the issue, is with traffic. The safety
Yeah.
of it. As
Oh, yeah, I was
people
saying, you
speed out
see
on
'em every
the
morning.
highway. The stretch between 70 and Main Avenue West, generally that portion of the sidewalk's usually covered with gravel, and that's very dangerous.
Yeah, it is.
Between 70 and Main Avenue West, like right there at the corner of them?
At the corner of B&B and 70, which is
Okay.
3rd Avenue,
Yeah.
there in Main Avenue West.
Okay.
It's usually covered with gravel, so.
Yeah, 'cause a lot of times you'll catch
It's
them,
quite
they'll be
rough.
running through there, and they'll be actually out in the
It's
road.
just dangerous, yeah.
It's safer, but don't get me wrong, they've got flashing lights on, they got the whole 9 yards. It's not like they're, you're not gonna see them before you get to them.
You could clean off that gravel and it would just keep coming back. It needs to be asphalted down between the street and the sidewalk, and I think that would stop the problem.
A lot of it is water drainage.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, go ahead.
No, that's great. I love it. I love the discussion. Well, okay, so my next item, and I'm looking at you because you said you're concerned about landscaping, and I get that.
I'm looking at it as a security issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want our pedestrians to be safe.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
And so we'll have to kind of meet in the middle.
You wouldn't be opposed to no more than knee high.
We'll see.
I wouldn't think so, but that's just me looking at security of it.
Well, the way
Pedestrians, their safety as far as someone stalking. So,
Yeah. Well, and we could look at, concentrate the trees and shrubby type stuff around the perimeter so that it's not necessarily blocking view. And you don't want blocking view of the stage either, so.
Correct.
I'm not a landscape architect, and so I haven't drawn out the entire plan yet, but, one of the things that I feel like I got out of the public input, was that people are looking for what I called an oasis in the downtown. I mean, you've got a whole lot of concrete, a whole lot of, roads, parking areas and stuff. And so it's not just having grass on site that makes it a green space.
Hickory and Valdez does a very good job of street maintenance, not maintenance, but landscaping. Their Valdez's maintenance crew, they're down there watering the flowers and plants every day. They have their little wagons pulling them along behind them. But
Yeah.
It's pretty as you drive down Main Street Valdez.
It
Norman Rockwell, so.
Well, let's see.
Same thing in McDowell. I see it in McDowell County.
Yeah.
Going through downtown Marion, they're always out there with their gigantic.
I'll tell you something, I like about Marion, you don't see no power lines. It's all underground.
Which reminds me, that's another aspect that's not written in here because it's not glamorous. But those overhead power lines are gonna interfere with the overhead power lines I've lost my bearings.
Yeah, you're right.
Right back here. Those are gonna interfere with some of the use of the parking, so we'll have to look at either burying those if they're still in use or just taking them down, I'm not sure. So landscaping will be a big thing, but we'll work to make sure that we retain visibility where we need it. seating throughout the park, all over, close to every amenity. You know, you should have a bench by the splash pad, you should have a bench in the shade, a bench in the sun, a picnic table over by the stage. I mean, options for seating and gathering. And then, I guess I've got a couple more recommendations here. Interactive art features or small play structures I put in here. Now, I don't know if y'all have seen like Lowe's Park in Hickory, the downtown, they've got the mosaic type stuff and it's somewhat interactive. Or even at a zoo, you know, they've got a lot of times they'll have a big concrete tortoise that you can sit on and take your kid's picture. So stuff like that, things that will be unique to the Hildebran Park and that'll be photo ops essentially. Things that'll keep the kids entertained without being a distraction to other events happening at the park. And that would just be kind of dispersed throughout, like the benches. We need to provide outdoor restrooms, not just the ones in the gymnasium. Part F wants your restrooms to be open to the public anytime your park's open to the public. Now, obviously, because you can't secure the park, you can have hours that you set, and you'll have to lock the restrooms. But the restrooms within the gymnasium are not ADA accessible and just don't really fit the bill here. And you don't necessarily want the whole gymnasium to open every time you have an event. So one of the recommendations is to provide outdoor restrooms. That could be, as it's shown on my current site plan, that could be included in the concessions building. Maybe it's tacked on the back of the stage. It could be part of the picnic shelter or standalone. But restrooms to serve the park. And potentially, especially if that building is demolished, then some sort of restrooms to serve the ball fields also across this space. And then construct a concession space, particularly if we're demolishing that back building. The vision would be having a concession space that could be shared by the different youth leagues, Burke County Recreation, and anybody who's holding an event, so the town, or I mean, I guess HHDA said they probably wouldn't use the concession space, but there is a recommendation there. Now this, and that pretty much fills out this park entirely. I've separated out, I'm looking at the town's existing sidewalk network kind of as a park. I mean, it's an amenity that the town is responsible for, provides. So and these recommendations are not complete. There will be more than the ones that are written on here, and I'm not even gonna go through all of these right now. I'll tell you that I did a walking audit with Avery. She's our ADA specialist as well as one of our Greenway transportation people. We did a walking audit of the existing sidewalks and we found, I mean, there's the things that you already know, like there's, you know, a gap in the sidewalk network on this one particular property, or there's no crosswalk. But then there's things that I wouldn't have picked up on before, like, I can't even remember what these things are called, but the pad at the end of the sidewalk before you get to the crosswalk.
The ramp, they're not ADA compliant because they have to have a certain amount of, one, it's slope on top of the little rubber things that, where they don't like run it, because it's.
Yeah, they don't all have the, like, anything that you could feel, if you were blind. But the other thing is, if you were blind or in a wheelchair, you kind of go by feel to lead you where you're going. And if the sidewalk goes this way, and then it hits a ramp that takes me this way, the road's right here, now I'm walking out into the road. So there's stuff like that throughout the town, and we'll kind of call those out and make recommendations. A lot of this sidewalks and stuff that are within a roadway, particularly if it's a roadway that's owned, maintained by DOT, you're gonna just kind of have to wait until the opportunity arises to work on these things. If DOT is repaving or redoing a road, then a lot of times they are willing to work with you to provide sidewalks as long as the town is willing and able to maintain those sidewalks in the future. So, we'll have a listing of updates to the existing sidewalks and some of the more desired routes for new sidewalks, which I'll just tell you, most popular is all of 70, and then basically the main avenue loop, which I think everybody kind of knew is very popular, but there's some recommendations to improve safety and accessibility there. And then we'll also talk about, and this is gonna be a vague recommendation. I'm sorry, I'm dragging this out, you guys. But this will be a vague recommendation, but there are a number of regional plans, regional greenways that are being planned and designed right now. One of them is the Catawba River Trail, which would kind of connect from Morganton over to Hickory, ideally, along, or, reasonably along the river. So probably Hildebran would connect somewhere in Rodas, if you would connect to that. There's also that's a long way to go. Well, that's a long-term plan. There's a Wilderness Gateway Trail, that's a state designated trail in southern Burke County and southern Catawba County. And I think we're gonna have a really good opportunity. The trick is gonna be getting people across 40, but I think there's a really cool opportunity to maybe connect to that trail in the future down by Henry River and get people connected from that regional trail to Henry River tourist destination into Hildebran to eat lunch, and onward. And then there's one more trail that's being planned, and I'm blanking on it right now. But that'll be one of the recommendations too, is long-term, kind of how you can tie into these greenways and get people into town. So I guess I just wanted to hear from y'all if you think I've missed anything, or if anything is just glaringly not cool, we'll remove it. Otherwise, I'm gonna kind of work with this, and I'll put the recommendations into short-term, long-term timeframes and give you some cost estimates for them.
I saw one paragraph, actually half a paragraph, that discussed bike routes. We have the potential in this area for a lot of bike access. We have a company over on I-40 Access Road that is looking to purchase property to set up a cafe, coffee. Defeat is the name of the company. Very heavy into bikes, and
I think sports.
Are they the socks?
Yeah.
So the socks.
Yeah.
The sport.
He revealed his intentions for the properties to the right and to the left of him on I-40 Access Road, where he wants to put a social club, a stopping point for a bike route. But, with DOT, I'm not sure what the requirements are for bike lanes. Every Saturday, there's 25 to 30 bikes that come through Hildebran.
On 70?
On a group, it's a group that comes out of Hickory, but, something to think about too.
Yeah. Well, where do you see, you see a lot of cyclists on 70.
A lot of it's on
Wilson
Road, and we currently have a project submitted to the DOT for modernization of that road, which would widen it. And that was part of that, was to help with the bike.
They come up Airport Road out of Longview, out of Pinal County, and turn onto Main Street and hit Wilson Road, come down and hit North Center Street back into town.
Okay.
Thing I'll mention too real quick is that some of the stuff that Aaron was mentioning ties into with some of these DOT funded projects. With us being at the population we are, if we have it in a adopted plan, the DOT will pay for those for pedestrian type facilities. And so that's why some of those are added as recommendations, either vaguely or maybe specifically, where when DOT gets to certain projects, as in the 118 bridge is one of them, and that's where we're putting in recommendations for pedestrian facilities. And but any other future DOT projects, if we have this in this plan, that pedestrian plan, it opens us up to where we might not pay for anything at all, and we get those facilities put in. And so that's kind of the intent here is, to accomplish that goal of bike lanes or, any type of multi-use pedestrian type path. That's been added into this project. What's not in our pedestrian plan that we know of has been added into this, and then it opens us up to that potential funding.
So it's our parks and our pedestrian wish list that we're kind of trying to contain within this document.
I like it.
Any other suggestions? Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
She pulled double duty tonight, back to back. Thank you.
All right, 8D, appointment planning board, wait a minute, appoint the planning board as the Parks and Recreation Board Committee. Hunter's gonna speak on this.
Yep, so I won't take up too much of your time. I will reference in the drafted section that Aaron provided you, it's on page 30, I guess 34 is the total. Page 30, it's in your packet. Under general recommendations, it talks about appointing a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. This is being kind of requested or recommended by staff because one, it's not necessarily required for our part of the grant, but it does get us additional points. And with that being said, instead of going through the process of appointing a whole new board, and planning board meets monthly, I keep them up to date with Parks and Recreation, or especially with Cardiff and all this other stuff, that we just appoint them to have them wear another hat. And basically that would then cover that would cover us for that to get those additional points on Cardiff. It'll also act as an advisory committee if we receive Cardiff for anything Parks and Recreation moving forward. And it gives them something to do because even though we try to meet monthly, we always don't have planning related business. And any board of adjustment business is pretty much anything if we receive any type of variance or conditional use. So it's nothing that's always going to be set in stone. So the intent here would be Parks and Rec would be as needed, and or if it needs to fill maybe a gap to produce a meeting for planning board. I did mention this to them. They were okay. I mean, they're okay with it. Like I said, it's just kind of wearing another hat and it's as needed. So now just kind of to go ahead and accomplish one of the general recommendations.
How many people are on the planning board?
On planning board is 5 and 1 alternate.
And we currently have a council member that is on recreation and tourism committee.
Mm-hmm.
How do we feel about having that council member also added to that advisory?
That would be completely fine. Like I said, I think the whole intent is where we don't have to reappoint a whole new board. And with that being said, whoever that representative is, if there is specific Parks and Recreation business, I will make sure to reach out to them to be present at the meeting. But the way it would work is if we have actual Parks and Recreation business, we would probably do our planning board business or vice versa, open, close, open, close, open, close. So that's how we do it for planning board and board of adjustments. If it's just kind of general conversation or updates, then we'll probably just all do it in one meeting. And whoever that representative is might not necessarily have to be there, but there is actual business or discussion in regards to maybe part of grant, park, or any additional or future projects. Then that I'll make sure that myself or whoever the staff member is to make sure to let that council representative know to be present at the meeting if they would like.
Well, and I think it makes sense because, I mean, this is no offense to current or past members of that committee, of the Recreation and Tourism Committee, but essentially that's not really contributed much to that. And I think it makes sense for that council member to act as that liaison and to kind of help bridge that gap. And as much as I think the planning board needs to be on there, I do think that committee member, whoever it is, going forward for the life of however, I think that person should be on it. Now, granted, that'll make an even number of people, but I do think it makes good sense to add that person to it.
And even if we had to, if we needed to make it odd, either, I'd have to get, if we needed the right bylaws or whatever, but we could either we have an alternate that technically in planning board business or any board adjustment could be there for discussion and put input, but if we have all full 5 members, they don't have a vote. With that being said, we could then include that alternate to be a 7th if we wanted to then have an odd number if we had some type of formal vote. But for the most part, anything that Parks and Recreation, this committee would do would be kind of act the same as planning board. It would end up ultimately coming to council for final discussion. And so even if it is an even number and for some reason it was a split, I would just state that the recommendation was split 3-3 or however it was.
And this advisory board would just be until the project is complete.
It would actually be the intent, I think, to always have this board established, and that's why it's also planning board. Because once again, they're wearing another hat, and so then if we do have additional projects down the road that maybe require some type of input from a Parks and Rec advisory committee, we've already got it established, and we don't have to worry about it.
I like it.
Any other questions? So I think you have to just need to, I guess, vote.
Just vote on that.
I'll make a motion to appoint the planning board with the addition of the Recreation and Tourism Committee holder on the council to be the Parks and Rec Committee.
Okay, I'll call for a vote.
Cole, yes.
Five, yes.
Terry, yes.
Derek, yes.
And yes.
Okay, thank you. Consider an official name for the park at the old school site. And it can't be Hildebran Community Park because that's already taken. So you see some suggestions there.
I think on it.
Staff has not, I think we have a few minor recommendations, but this is honestly up to council. So this would need to be an actual discussion.
Okay. How do y'all feel? Any ideas?
What about Royal Park?
Yeah, I don't know if people like that.
Okay.
I mean, it ties into the school.
She said she's been called a Tower Park during her phase, so that's a name, Tower Park.
I call it Heritage Park, but really just what I call it.
Terry, how do you feel?
I really hadn't thought about it, as far as the name, I really haven't. Wouldn't even have to give any consideration, other than Hildebran Park or something,
And
Well, we don't have, it just is awkward to talk about. I don't need it. I mean, you can name the park after it's built. We can call it something temporary for the purpose of
Maybe
application.
table this to the next meeting, this one ideas.
Yeah, if that's something we'd
Okay.
like to do and maybe even poll the citizens.
Yeah.
In some way.
Can I also ask / mention, if we'd like to honor the park or even have a sponsor, that's something that can be also added in after the fact. We can do whatever, whatever the park's name is, if we end up honoring it to somebody later down the road, or we potentially have somebody maybe sponsor a facility or something, it can just be added into the name, but this would just be the general base name.
Okay. All right. So we'll put table that to the next meeting. Is that consensus?
Yeah. Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right, 8D, update on splash pad. Logan?
Yes, so for the splash pad, the only update I wanted to give, and I did send this out, I did let council know that I do also want to make it public. So we had talked about the splash pad, costing roughly $190,000 when we talked about it in the last meeting. That estimate was that estimate included a pump at the existing Hildebran Community Park. So it was gonna have to be pumped up basically from Main Avenue to the top of the hill. That was gonna require, piping, pumps, a lot of extra money. What we would be looking at for a splash pad that didn't require the pumps and the plumbing, it would be roughly half that. So we're looking at closer, somewhere between 80 and 110. But I feel a lot more comfortable telling you it's closer to 100,000 than 200,000, and I don't want to make that known to council and to the public. But that's all.
Okay, that's good. All right, now we're up to 8E, and we're going to talk about the Bill 288.
So I requested this, and in the interest of time, considering how late it is, I'm gonna try to make this as succinct as possible. So there's been a lot of discussion about Senator Warren Daniels' Senate Bill 288 that was submitted on March 15th. And there's been a couple of copies of resolutions that have been sent to council to look at either in support or opposition of. The long story short, the bill is looking at moving municipality and school board of election, the election cycles that are currently in odd number years to even number years, so they would coincide with general election, with state and federal elections. There's many reasons for it. There's many reasons against it. I hope the council did take time just to kind of look over it. I know Senator Daniel reached out to council individually to kind of see if they had any questions. He's made himself available. I personally have talked to his office as well as Representative Hugh Blackwell's office. I forwarded out some other information today that I'll get into quickly. I think the main reasons for it are because voter turnout in odd number years tends to average between 8 and 12%. And then with state and federal elections in even number of years, it ranges anywhere from 40 to 80%. So you're talking a difference of 4 to 8 times the amount of voter turnout. To me, it's always made the most sense that people should be most concerned with local elections, because those are the ones that affect your day-to-day life more so than what your state or federal government is going to do on the day-to-day. State and federal aren't going to talk about splash pads. They're not going to talk about putting a roof on a tower. That's what we're talking about. So I think those are kind of the main driver. A secondary, very, very minor part of this is the cost savings piece. So as it currently stands, in odd number years when there's municipality and school board elections, the town is charged for those elections. In elections in even number of years, the town is not charged for those elections. Looking over the past several years, we tend to pay just under $1,200 per municipality and school board election. That's what the town pays to the county. During the other years, we paid nothing. When I talked to Debbie Mace at the Burke County Board of Elections, I asked her if we move one or the other or both of the elections, the municipality or school board, to even number of years, how could that potentially affect cost? And a lot of this is just kind of, it's not hearsay, there's reason to believe it, but just so we can kind of understand the cost piece, which again is a very minor part of this. So if we move school board only, then and we leave the municipality elections in odd number of years, the cost for that is going to go up, because part of the cost to the county is about $65,000 to $70,000 for Burke County. Okay, for any year. But if the school board elections are with municipality elections, that is a countywide election, then some of that is split between the county and the town. Okay, so if we move the school board, that means we're only holding municipality elections in odd number of years. We're basically footing a larger piece of the bill. If we move both of them to even number of years, then we don't pay anything. We won't be paying anything. So for the town of Hildebran, you're saving about $1,160 to $1,200. Okay, so again, very small with how it affects our town. How it affects the county is the county's only having to put those elections on every other year as opposed to every year. But that's $65,000 to $70,000. I've got some information from Hugh Blackwell's office that I sent out. And to put this in reference, local elections, there are 552 municipalities in the state of North Carolina. 531 currently hold elections in odd number years. So that means towns like Hildebran, the majority of them hold their town elections in odd number years. There's only 21 in even number years. School board elections, there are 116 school districts statewide. Only 6 hold them in odd number years. The majority of them, 110, hold them in even number years. Okay, so thinking back to the cost piece, if we follow suit with what the majority is, Hildebran elections would be an odd number, school board would be an even, and our cost of elections will be going up. Okay, so it would make better sense to either move them both or don't move either. Okay, now the other part of this is, I know some of the reasons against it. One thing people are talking about is, and I'm going to paraphrase, I don't like big government telling us little people what to do. Okay, so again, I'm paraphrasing and taking that, I'm exaggerating that to make a point. So whether the bill was pushed by Senator Daniel to the General Assembly, and that's going to be voted on. So some people view this as Raleigh is determining what happens to Burke County, not the citizens of Burke County deciding that. The other way to look at it, and the city of Morganton has kind of come out very much against this bill. You can also use the same argument to say that some people don't like the fact that Morganton speaks for all of Burke County. Granted, they hold the lion's share of the population, they hold the lion's share of a lot of the funds that come to the county, but do you want to use the same argument about people in Raleigh or Morganton and how it affects Hildebran? So the way I look at it is we have a couple of options here. We can support it if we think it makes the most sense for our town and our citizens. We can oppose it, or we can choose to go rogue and just affect what we can affect and make a resolution as it stands just for the elections we can control, which are municipality elections. We can't control what happens to the school board. again, the biggest driver, all of us were elected in odd number of years. So we're talking, I know in the year that I was elected, roughly 10 point whatever percent of the voter turnout was there. I think a lot of this driver is more focused on what happens on the school board as opposed to municipality elections. But again, if both of these types of elections affect our day-to-day life more than state or federal elections, I would think you would want the most exposure to it as possible. So my opinion is I think it makes sense for the elections to be in even number of years, because I want, with bigger voter turnout, you have a better chance at a representation that is true to the voter turnout for the town itself and the citizens that are going to be represented on the school board. That is my opinion. But I want this to be an open discussion, and I would like for us to take a stand one way or the other, because there has been a whirlwind of press within the last 7 days about this. And there's also been a lot of buyer's remorse of people that have come out and said one thing, read through the bill, found out more information. And one last piece I'll throw out is it was talking about the exception of Roadhis and Longview. I would like to address that real quick. The fact that we all know Longview is a border town. Roadhis is a border town, okay? When a town is incorporated, it can only choose one county to incorporate in, even though the city stretches 2 counties and citizens live in 2 different counties. This is what happened in both. Longview was incorporated in Catawba County. Roadhis was incorporated in Caldwell County. Senator Daniel does not represent Catawba or Caldwell counties. He represents Burke County, Cleveland County. So I want to make sure that we remember that those were the reasons why those towns were given the exception, because since they're out of this jurisdiction, it would make sense for him to create legislation to affect a large percentage of citizens that don't live in his jurisdiction, okay? So I just wanted to stress that, because a lot of people, and especially in Morganton's press release, they acted like there was no discernible reason for that. That is a very discernible reason. Both of those towns were incorporated in the early 1900s, I think 1903 and 1907. So this is a 115-year thing. But I'd like for this to be an open discussion, and I would like to see the council take a stand tonight, one way or the other. What I would also like to do is for it to be an official stand, we pass a resolution. Again, there's a resolution to support, a resolution to oppose. I would like for that to be made public. I would like a copy either way sent to Senator Daniel's office, a copy sent to Representative Hugh Blackwell's office. I would like for it to also be made public. And the reason why I want such public emphasis behind this is I'm very big on transparency. I don't like the fact that Morganton come out and absolutely stated that all county leaders or all town leaders within the county are standing arm to arm against this, when our name was made to portray that we took a position that we had not. So that's why I want to make sure that the record is correct and transparent from the get-go.
Could I respond?
Absolutely.
You said transparency.
Yes.
I don't feel Senator Daniels is very transparent, because he didn't bring it up to the public at all. He's trying to fast track it through, and I don't understand why it's just Burke County. Why he represents Avery and Caldwell. Why is it not those counties also? You mentioned voter turnout. I added up what Jenny and I received for our votes. It was over 300 votes. That's out of a town of about 1,000 registered voters. So that's a third. That's 33% in our town. It wasn't 8% like was mentioned. Senator Daniel also mentioned that he thought there'd be more energy and enthusiasm for the election if it was in the even number of years. The energy and enthusiasm is always on the presidential election, and we have to go from, we'd have president, governor, senator, congressman, council of state, judges, state representatives, county commissioners, and then below soil and water conservation commissioners, we would be there. And I don't think that gives us very much energy or enthusiasm. I think it's better that it remains as a separate election. And I think that draws more attention to our community and more attention to our elected officials, because the highways are filled with signs at the general election. I don't know that people would even notice us. I don't know that they would even distinguish us from anybody else. And I don't understand the rush to get it through. I didn't understand that, why it was so urgent that it be pushed through. And I thought that we would still have to pay for the election, even if it's in an even number of years. Is that?
I asked Debbie Mace that question and several other points that you brought up. So first of all, I do want to say that I absolutely agree with your point. I don't think this was the best way to go about it as far as not consulting with people immediately and with the rush. I don't like that, but that's why I said we kind of have three options. We can either support, we can oppose, or we could make our own legislation to do what we wish to do. It would just be sent up through the state. I talked to Logan about that process. To your point about the cost, I did ask Debbie Mace on that. If we moved it to the even number of years, she said we would not have to pay. All right. To your point about how long the ballot would be, I did ask the question, the way I phrased it was administratively, what challenges would you see if everything was on the same ballot? And she said it would make for a very long ballot. To your point, absolutely make for a long ballot. So the question would be, would that be, the more you add to it, would that increase the potential for confusion in the ballot? Okay, so there's arguments for both ways on that. But I do agree with you, it'd make for a long ballot. The point that I brought up to her, and she said that she hadn't thought of this, and this was something that struck me in the moment of the conversation, was election campaigning never stops. They're already talking about 2022 midterm elections. They're already talking about front runners for 2024. There's always rumors about how this election went. Let's do this election. What about voter campaign fatigue? At some point, if in my world, campaign season for any election would never last longer than 30 days because goodness gracious, right? But campaigning never stops. Representatives get elected for a 2-term cycle. One day they get elected, the next day they already start their re-election campaign. Same thing with governors, presidents, you name it, okay? So at some point, do we even consider voter fatigue as a real thing? And by moving them to even number of years would give you a chance to kind of de-stress. To your point about the road signs, absolutely. There's too many road signs, and if you start putting local officials out there in road signs, yeah, there's a potential you could get lost in the conversation. But I just want to make sure that people are aware that I have personally never voted for somebody just because I saw a name on a sign. I want to know what they stand for, and I want that candidate to find creative ways to reach out to me, to talk to me, and I don't want a passive candidate to ever slide into an office because of a potential low turnout. It doesn't matter what election it is. From the bottom to the top, it could be soil water conservation. I don't care. I don't want somebody just slide in passively with my vote. I want them to get out and make it known. Pounding the pavement is free. All it costs is time and potentially whatever it costs to print a flyer if you want to take a flyer. Talking to people, holding town halls, coffee meetings, whatever COVID does in that sense, there are ways to for a candidate to make themselves known without spending additional advertising funds. And in my mind, I think if the candidate shows work ethic in an increased political environment, then that to me, that means that they will possibly be more active as an office holder instead of somebody that runs for, say, a school board election unopposed and just gets in because there's no other elections going on. Nobody else chooses to run in it, so they just get it. So I feel like, number one, yes, the candidates would have to work harder, but I see that as a good thing. But I mean, again, I'm not saying that that's absolutely the right way. There's arguments for both sides, and I agree with some of the same points you mentioned. But, you know, I want to hear what other people have to think about it too.
You just touched on what I'm saying. It's gonna make a candidate have to work harder to get elected. It's gonna make him have to prove to the people what he's running for, what he stands for. I mean, that's my thing. Well, you got a low turnout, where you got a low turnout going to vote, that could be swayed either way.
Yeah, fewer votes have a bigger impact.
Right.
I understand what both of you saying, but this is a small town. Don't need anybody, I might be misunderstanding this. Is anybody out of our town, can they vote for us? You know, if you go to even number of years, you talk about everybody voting. I don't see where the other people are involved in it. See what I'm saying?
I think it's interesting when you look at the,
I mean, it's 500 some
And I'm
towns
saying-
vote odd days.
Total
I'm just saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's nothing
I think
wrong
the
with what we're doing.
I think the interesting thing is, as Wendell pointed out, and Cole, Senator Daniel is a senator for three counties, Avery County, Caldwell County, and Burke County. Did introduce no local bill in Avery County. Avery County also has municipalities and has school board. Caldwell County has the same thing. Caldwell County introduced a bill only for the school system, because you have to be a local, you have to be a senator. Burke County, he did all the local towns that are only in Burke County. I've had, in days past, I've had legislators introduce local bills at the request of municipalities, but always at the request of the municipality. I've never seen a city charter change, and this will change the charter without a request from the town fathers. I've never had a legislator change it on his own volition without consulting the local towns. That's a breaking precedent. I know it's happened somewhere else. It happened in Alabama once before. There's political motives behind that. Not that I'm saying there's political motives here, but it's strange to me, if he wants to change it, why doesn't he have everybody in his district all drink out of the same cup? While Avery County is not touched at all. As I understand, Caldwell County, he introduced that bill because Dustin Hall, who has a problem with the school board over there, wanted that bill introduced for the school board over there.
And the ones doing it
I
for
feel
the
something
others.
behind it too.
I scratch your back, you scratch mine. That's what they're doing.
I just think, you know, you can start doing, I don't think it's an economic issue. I think there's more to it than there. I think I would have been much more comfortable had he come to the town requested, or any of the towns that requested. I don't think Warren was strong on it. I think Warren is a principled, nice guy. I think he's trying to do what he thinks somebody wants him to do. Now, whether, I think he should have notified College Springs, he should have notified Hildebran, should have notified Valley, should have notified Braxton. None of those towns, to my knowledge, had any prior knowledge of this or made any request. As I understand, Hugh Blackwell has not joined in either way or against this legislation.
Well, I mean, he's a politician, so until it calls for a vote.
They all.
But I did talk to Corey Swanson, I think, in Hugh Blackwell's office today, and asking why was Burke County singled out. And he mentioned, and this is Hugh Blackwell's office, this isn't Warren Daniels' office, mentioned the fact a lot of the drivers to this had to do with voter turnout, especially with the school board countywide. That the school board voter numbers were significantly lower as compared to what voter turnouts were in the even number of years. I think it's more school board driven than it is municipality election.
Do the same you do Caldwell County, just do school board.
Well, and again, that's why I mentioned the thing at the beginning is if you move school board, then the cost for municipality elections goes up significantly because the cost share from the county. Now, again, the cost is a very minor piece of this.
Mr. Daniels is less interested in the cost of the Caldwell County school system and the Caldwell County town than he is Burke County.
Well, and I do know that McDowell
I don't see
County.
the differentiation between the three counties. See,
Yeah, I don't.
they're all drinking the same
Like I
cup.
said, I don't think, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, there's some reason behind it.
Well, and I know in the last election that the citizens of McDowell County approved for the Board of Elections to be, or the Board of Education elections to be moved from odd to even. So I know McDowell County just recently did that as the voters. And again, with your point, I absolutely agree the best way to handle this
That was the local government.
was to start. But the reason why I bring this up now is, we could quarterback, why did he do this? What's that? The issue at hand is the bill was submitted. And so I would like the council on its face, understanding how it was submitted may not have been the best way, but looking at the legislation itself, is this something that on its face, do we agree with? And then secondly, do we take action to support the current bill or oppose? Or do we take the alternate route, and if we do support it, then we take the information and act on just moving municipality elections, because that's what we can control, because it makes sense for our town and its citizens. So I think, again, to your point, yes, the year that you and Jeannie, there was about 30% turnout. In the year that Terry and Derek were elected, it was less than that. I can't remember the number, but it was significantly less. Even their numbers were a lot less than the numbers when we got elected. But with that said, is if you look at it just on voter turnout and the potential for how it's going to be represented, do we think that there's truth in that? And then do we want to take that a step further and make our own legislation or go down that path? Or do we want to support, or do we say, to heck with all of it, if it ain't broke, go fix it? But I don't want to be so caught up in the fact this is the way we've always done. Let's trust people that have always done this for 150 years and continue down that cycle. Or do we want to look at this with a fresh set of eyes and say, there's merit to change it, even though it's something we haven't done? Is there a benefit to changing?
Ben, are you still there? Ben?
I think so.
Okay, do you have a comment or a word?
That would be great. The fact that this bill was introduced without contacting any of the affected towns or municipalities indicates to me that not enough forethought or planning was done on the issue. The proposal disproportionately affects Burke County. I think it would discourage potential candidates from running for town offices, and I think it would cause elections to get lost in the surge of the national elections. But personally, I think the legislation is unneeded and unsolicited.
Okay. Derek, you have a word?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I think it's a deeper conversation than, I think everybody's sitting here looking tired and weary and is this something we think about? I guess what are we trying to accomplish at the end of the day? What are we looking to do, Cole?
I guess the reason why I want the board to take a stand today is to the point that Wendell brought up, that this bill is being fast-tracked in Raleigh. And I think if we table this discussion, then we're not going to be able to make our voice heard. And to the point with the fact that we weren't consulted ahead of time, I think it is important for our voice to at least be said and sent to all the appropriate parties, so that way we can actually say, yes, we do take a stand one way or the other. And so that is the goal tonight, is to make a stand. I know it's almost 9:30. I'm exhausted. Trust me, this has been a heck of a Monday. But I would like for us to take a stand one way or the other. And so I just want to hear what you guys
I feel
think.
like we ought to be able to take a stand one way or the other, whether we're for it, whether we're against it, because it was put in the paper that we were against it and nobody made a decision. Who made that decision?
I spoke for myself.
Well, that said the town of Hildebran is what I
No.
said.
In the paper, it says right here, Wendell Hildebran said, speaking for himself, he was opposed to the proposal.
What I read in Hickory Record said it was town of Hildebran.
And the city of Morganton government page said the town of Hildebran. The city of Rutherford College government page, both Facebook pages, that's social media. There's been multiple instances where it was phrased the town of Hildebran in conjunction with Drexel, with Rutherford College, with all these other towns. And again, Drexel's looking at this this week. Morganton's looking at it tonight. Everybody has kind of come back. So if the town of Hildebran is put out there publicly one way or the other before the council has had a chance to speak on that, since this is a council manager form of government, I felt that it was only proper that the council actually discuss that. And if we choose to support the opposition of it, then yes, we say, yes, we do. And we send that letter to Senator Daniel Blackwell's office, put it in the paper. But I don't want it to say the town of Hildebran if we didn't take an official vote.
Would he? If he didn't say it, they'd go back to the paper and have him reprint it that he didn't say that. He didn't represent town of Hildebran. He spoke for himself.
Well, and I'm not saying
I
Wendell
mean,
didn't,
that's,
but
I'm just saying the press.
Yeah.
You can't.
That's what I was saying, that's what was in the paper.
They don't, you can't believe nothing they print.
But if city government pages make the comment without consulting us, then it's no different than what Senator Daniel's done. That's why I want to vote tonight. As long as this meeting's going and as much as I want to get out of here, as much as everybody else, I just want us to take that vote.
Well, did y'all get the email about that this was happening? Did y'all get the email from Logan?
Yes.
Okay, nobody responded.
I responded, but we had 48 hours notice to be at that press conference and, we all have jobs. So sometimes we can't,
I understand. It was important enough to me that I took time off my job.
I don't have coverage. I can't
I
quit
just got
pharmacy.
through taking 6 weeks off my wife with cancer to have surgery. I just went back to work. It's sort of hard for me to walk away.
Well, Debbie Mace is the director of the election board, and I think she knows more about it than we do. She said it likely would save some money, but she wonders whether it would be worth the confusion it would cause the voters. And currently, our ballot is front and back, one-page ballot. This would go to a second ballot that would be on the front page. And that would be like handing voters 2 separate pages for a ballot, she said. She worries that voters would discard the second page, which would put the candidates on the second page at a disadvantage.
She reiterated that comment to me as well. And I do think poll workers do an outstanding job every time I've stepped in for a primary or election, whatever, of walking through that. And I mean, that would be, something the poll workers would probably be trained to point out, this is a 2-page ballot, and as they walk through that. Now, again, take that as you wish. I share some of the concerns with the longer a ballot gets, the more chance of error there being. But she did absolutely reiterate those same comments to me as well. But she was smart and said she isn't going one way or the other, but she reiterated those exact same comments.
Does anyone else have anything to say? Ben, are you still there?
Ben?
Barely.
Okay. Well, it is almost 9:30. So what is the pleasure of the board?
Is this something we have to vote on tonight? Is this something we have to vote on tonight? Is this?
I would suggest that we vote on it tonight because the next meeting of this council is a month away, and this won't give us the opportunity to make that voice heard in Raleigh before the vote is made. So I'm suggesting.
But I think we're rushing it.
Yes.
Well, this information was sent out by Logan over a week ago. I did reach out to all council members individually and ask them to review this. So I know that you've had the weekend to look at it. Again, I know that's still rushed, but
I've been traveling for 4 days, so.
I know.
Yeah. So.
Well, I'll make a motion that we support Senator Daniel, Senate Bill 288.
Okay, I will call it for a vote. Cole?
Cole, yes.
Mike, no.
Terry, yes.
Derek, I haven't had time to read through it, so I don't know exactly, which way to go with this, so.
I had a coin.
Huh?
I had a coin.
Gotta call.
It's on my app.
Yeah, I could say yes, but it would be out of ignorance, so I'm gonna have to say no because I have not read it. So if it's tonight, it's gonna have to be a no.
Ben, no.
Okay.
So since the council voted to not support, does that consider us opposing? And do we want to adopt the resolution to oppose, and submit that to all pieces.
That's a good point Paul makes. So technically, you did not vote to oppose, you just voted not to approve
To approve.
the resolution supporting. So if you do want the town to take a stance against, you would have to bring that motion and vote.
And if you don't want to take an opinion, I mean, that's also not an opinion.
Okay.
Well, if we need a motion to oppose, I will make that motion.
Okay. There's a motion to oppose the bill. I'll call it for a vote.
Cole, no.
Mike, oppose.
Okay.
Terry, no.
Eric opposed.
Ben, oppose.
All right. Well, I guess we've discussed this at length, so is there anything else? Oh, we still have the rest of the agenda. Sorry.
So I just want to clarify one last thing on this and we'll let it go. So since the town did vote to oppose, I still say what I said in the beginning, that I do think all of this information should be forwarded to the appropriate channels to make everyone aware that the town did take a stance on this.
Okay, is that need to be a vote?
Can I get a clarification on the vote?
Sure.
You voted no to the motion to oppose,
Correct, because I don't want to oppose it.
and you voted
To
no,
oppose it. I oppose it.
you opposed the bill.
Yep.
You said opposed, but you're opposed to the motion. You're opposed to Ben's motion, or you're opposed to the bill.
I voted no
He voted.
to oppose it.
Okay, but you said opposed, but you meant no. You voted opposed. Chris,
Well, now
you
I'm
opposed the
forgetting.
bill or the motion?
The
The motion was to oppose the bill.
How about we go again with the motion instead of the
It's
bill?
just a yes or no vote, either
Let me
yes.
maybe I didn't clarify it enough. Okay, the motion is to send out a letter saying that we, as the town, oppose this bill.
Yeah, we have a resolution that was in the paperwork that had the new 8E. Just say the motion is to approve the resolution opposing Senate Bill. So to approve the resolution opposing. So
So if you oppose the resolution, you vote yes, correct?
if you approve it, it's a yes. If you don't approve it, it's a no. So
Or you're still a no?
I'm a no.
Michael, you're a yes, correct?
I oppose it. Yes.
yes.
That's yes.
I'm no.
You're no.
And mine was yes, because I hadn't had a chance to thoroughly look at this correctly.
And being yours is a yes. But you made the motion.
Ben,
I'm really confused at this point.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I don't approve of the changing the election.
all right.
So that means yes.
So you're approving the resolution to
Which is a
oppose
motion, which is
the
to
bill.
Oppose the bill.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
That's three.
All right, let's try to hurry through the rest. All right, March facilities report, that's in your packet. Tax report, that's in your packet. Deputy report, that's in your packet. Committee reports.
Transportation Advisory Committee meets on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do have one on the.
Yeah.
And it was brought to my attention today. I would prefer if citizens came and approached the town that, our town members, and he probably got you when you were walking outside. I would rather you stay behind doors in a closed facility where they were speaking to you from outside the window.
Yeah.
As a safety purpose. This is for future reference. The guy that we were dealing with today, I dealt with him all morning and very easily could have escalated out of control.
And I will say, yeah, to Gary's point, the only reason he called me outside is I was sitting on the community center, walking back, and he was.
I just say that for future reference. I want everybody here on side caution.
Okay.
within the administrative means of this office.
All right, let's see. You said your meeting is
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Logan, do you have anything?
Same thing.
Okay, the policy board, Ben,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, okay. Economic development,
Waiting for an update from Peggy, because I was out of town, but I have not received it.
recreation and tourism,
That's typical.
water resource. Betty,
We meet Thursday. I was unable to attend the last meeting due to my wife's being in the hospital.
on the library board, we meet next Tuesday. Okay, other business.
Our other business, and I do apologize for bringing this to the board, but Alice got a text 30 minutes ago, 45 minutes ago saying, that person's not gonna be here.
Okay. So no closed session.
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other business? Any announcements?
Yes, so I did want to make this announcement. Number one, that was a real divisive vote. And I do want to say up front, I hope it doesn't linger. Reason being is I think we've come real far, and I hope this one Senate bill doesn't get your all council. Just put that out there. But good news, we did receive information from Senator Blackwell's office, or House of Representative Blackwell. The town, under the new COVID bill, is entitled to $590,000. Again, the last time we got this, it was only 55. So.
We had more, 10 times more.
Yeah, 10 times more, exactly. So yay, we got $590,000, but pump the brakes, we haven't been told how we can spend it. It's supposedly gonna be divided up into 2 or 3 payments throughout the year. So just be aware that that information is out there, it has been presented, we are entitled to that, and just understand we don't exactly know how we can spend it. That information should come out late April, early May. But other than that, that's all I got.
I did want to say one thing. I've been seeing it on Facebook and we're getting calls. The post office has been closed down. Mail is at Ackerd Post Office. They do have a sign up, but I did put a post on our Facebook. They have to go to Ackerd to get their mail.
I have a question on that.
Sinkhole,
There's a sinkhole, yeah.
Yep.
Sunday morning.
I heard that our office would still be open and you could request your mail. They would get it, but
Not-
you could not have access to the boxes.
Not right now.
Okay.
Building inspector condemned it.
Today.
Shut them down Friday.
Okay.
I heard they were gonna make a decision Monday whether they were gonna have to tear the building down. That's what I said. I didn't know that.
I don't know anything about the building or
That's
anything
the
like
last
that,
word
but
I heard.
That whole shopping center is privately owned by an attorney in Charlotte. So
Yeah, they're based out of New York, some of them too. Yeah.
one thing about the COVID, keep in mind, keep watching. As I understand the money, there's a real push to let the municipality use that money for infrastructure improvements, which would be really good for us. Because DOT's not making any improvement for us. They just ride the roads, they don't do anything.
Yeah, when you got one worker, you got 18 supervisor trucks full of, you can get much done.
You got one guy with children, 17 guys with cigarettes.
Are we ready to adjourn?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
adjourn.
Derek, yes.
I'm sitting here law.
All right, thank you all.
Terry was already adjourned.
I'm sorry this meeting went so long.
Hey, I started 3 o'clock this morning. What you do?